Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Basically, I'd like to take it from Mr. Hanandeh's last comment. He talked about all telecom operators cooperating and taking a stand. So I'd like first to ask the Jordanian telecom operators on the panel to basically say whether they agree or disagree, or and if they agree, what are the next steps for that? So, Mr. Thomas?
Yes, thank you very much. Of course, I agree 90% of what Zain CEO, my friend, just said, and we know that. First, on the general landscape of the industry, we'll put a number of figures about, by the way, the E for, I'm an engineer, so the E for bytes was exabytes. An exabyte is 1 million terabytes, which is 1 million gigabytes. So it's a lot of gigabytes on our network. So first, we have at the same time this paradox where globally, year after year, the number of data that are transported on our networks is growing by 30–40%. And at the same time, the global growth rate of industry in terms of revenue is growing 4%. This is worldwide. Of course, in some countries we are still catching up, but globally we have this paradox of having these two figures, which means that we are at a turning point where the industry will grow less than the economy. So the share of the telecom industry in the economy now will go lower than the global growth. So how to cope with this challenge? And because we have to keep investing in our network. Just the example of Orange Jordan, every year for the past 10 years, more or less, we invested 40 million GDs in our network every year. And this is 10% of our revenue. So we have to keep investing, but at the same time, other actors are taking the value. And I'm talking about the OTTs, I'm talking about the Googles, I'm talking about Facebook, I'm talking also about the handset manufacturers that are playing a leading role in the industry. So how to move the value a little bit more on telecom carriers and to keep us investing. So we will have to do a major critical decision in the next years on three major directions. The first one is really defending our core business. We are network operators. We need to be the best network operators. We need to keep on building the best network infrastructure, because if we don't do that, nobody will do it at our place, right? So we should be more efficient in building those networks and in operating those networks. The second strategic direction we should go is really to look at what we call the adjacencies, adjacent business. Shall we, or is it not reasonable to look at business that are close to what we are doing, but that bring more value to what we are doing? And you mentioned a couple of initiatives we can we can have. I will also mention the verticals, looking more at health, education, total solution for companies, cloud, money, mobile money. There are a lot of business that we are developing today, and we know this will be totally necessary for us to survive in the long term. So those adjacencies should be looked at, but also carefully, because you know, we have a lot of bad example, of wrong example of some things that have been done too quickly, like investing in the media. You know, how to make a little fortune. People thought that going to the media will make a little fortune, but in fact, how to make a little fortune? Start with a big fortune, invest in media, and then you end up with a little fortune, right? So there are some difficulties, and I think the key word is more partnership than investment or acquisition. And the third strategic direction we have to look at is clearly to be more efficient and to rethink our business model in order to be more efficient, to really think out of the box, and sometimes to even disrupt what we are doing. And I will take two directions. The first is the in-country optimization. We are working on being more efficient in sharing our sites. This is one step. But at the end of the day, we should look at other countries where they are going up to share the access network, or not duplicating investment in order to be globally more efficient. Another optimization route we can follow is the optimization in-group. Like at the Orange level, a lot of our functions are already centralized. Centralized or doesn't mean Paris. It can mean Abidjan, or it can mean Morocco, or some Eastern Europe countries. But how can we go further in order that each country, because like you look at Jordan, maybe we don't have the critical mass to have our R&D, to have our development, to have our operation, and shall we centralize some part of the operation? On those 2 points, and on many others, but I will stop here, we need to work with governments and regulators because we need their deep understanding of the rationale, of the drivers, where the industry is going. And if they take the wrong direction or do not let us go in where we should go, then it's the whole infrastructure of the countries that can be at risk.
Ihab. Thank you, Jawad. Sorry, but unfortunately I couldn't make it to Ahmad's session, so you asked me if I agree or I don't agree. Naturally, okay, as a competitor, so I totally disagree with what he said. Then just to play it safe, then we'll decide later when we see the video. Anyway, absolutely. On a serious note, and actually I don't want to repeat what my colleagues have mentioned, but just to set the scene on what's going on in not only in the telecom sector, but for the whole ICT environment. We look at the operators, we have a major drop in revenues. Drop means maybe less growth, and we've seen that in the MENA area, from 10% in the last 5 years, year-on-year growth, to less than 3%, and it will start plateauing. So revenue is definitely on the challenge. The data is exploding, as we know, tens of folds, and this is another issue, a challenge for the sector. Government, and specifically in some countries, and Jordan in specific, government, they are going through financial crisis, looking at the sector differently. Regulator looking at a different way of new players in the market, especially on the online, especially on new input that non-traditional operators dealing with, and challenges that they are facing in real liberalization of the sector and not. So government, revenues, regulator, and I would say another thing very important is the new ecosystem that we are working on. It's now, the ecosystem is changing. We have new major players coming with the mass players like the startups that we are talking about. The role that the operator trying to play currently is totally different than the role that they used to play in the past 10 years. So in new business models between the operators and the adjacent segments, when we're talking about energy, we're talking about health, about financial services. So all these things, like you are throwing a stone in the water. So government, regulator, operator, startups, a new ecosystem, a new balance, a new distribution, where each one can draw a line how they add value to that ecosystem, or and when and how, and of course the new business model. So looking at all these things, it puts everyone, actually all the stakeholders, put them under challenge that they need to work differently, and they need to look at things differently in order to keep this ball running, and everybody is making money when it comes to the operators and even the new partners, specifically when we are talking about the startups and the IT companies and the developers and the aggregators and what have you. But the name of the game is the balance. If there is no balance between all this new ecosystem that will be structured and will be settled, then we will start seeing problems coming out of that issue. When you have a government looking at the operators as the telecom operators as a source of money to cover a deficit in the budgets, this is a challenge. When the operators look at the startups, that they just want to get the best of those startups and then moving ahead without giving them the chance to grow and to start doing creating jobs and using the operators as a pad for launching the services. If the regulator they don't see the new setup or the new structure of the players from the small ones to the big ones. And actually we're discussing at Intaj as well, when you have a new startups coming in a country like Jordan or maybe Palestine or Egypt, and you have the government, not only government when it comes to the ICT or the regulator, they can understand their business model, but when they discuss the issues with the sales tax, with the income tax, it's something new for them. So they need to understand how this new ecosystem is structured and how the importance of having them in the horizon or in the spectrum of this ecosystem to create jobs and what have you. So in a nutshell, I prefer this year that we can really give more time to the audience to ask questions, rather than just repeating ourselves that revenues, we have to do that, we have to do that, we have an issue. So I want to stop in here just to give the chance for the rest.
Thank you very much, Ihab. Luigi, you come with a European and Italian perspective.
Thank you.
And I guess many telecom operators in Europe have already gone through what the 3 telcos in Jordan and the rest of the telcos in the region are about to go or already going, which is pressure on revenues and pressure on profits and so on. So your perspectives, please, the state of the industry in Europe and what lessons can be learned by operators and governments in the region from what has transpired in Europe. Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for this invitation. I think, at least for me, it's very interesting to have this opportunity to discuss with you the challenge of our sector. We have an expression in my country, I don't know if you have something similar, that says that when you have a good news, you can wait to pass it. But if you have a bad news, you have to pass immediately this bad news. So let me do this, to pass you immediately a bad news. Because I think that, in this respect, I think that you are lucky, because you know what's happening in Europe, and I think you have to think now what to do, and not to wait, because you will know what will happen to you, the same that is happening in Europe. So I'm sure that you will find a way to fix the problem before. So let me give you some numbers, figures, because this is not about words, it's about facts. And the facts are there. You know that I think that you should care about Europe. Because at the end of the story, I don't see that this is a problem only of European operators. They are in trouble, we don't care. Europe is very far, but is very near. And what happened, as I said, to Europe could happen also to this region. And there are a lot of new regulation is coming, and I will tell you what's happening in these days. So, first, some numbers. The sector in Europe is very important. Even if, despite I was shocked to learn how much important is in the region. For example, in Europe, the value of the telecom sector is about 3% of the GDP. I learned that in Jordan is about 15%, 14%. So here you have a problem because I think that this will not stay, and you know that in Europe is 3% or sometimes can be below 3%. So just to give you some figures, in the sector in Europe as a whole, the European operators, we have 280 billion euro revenues. This is the fourth year that we are losing revenue in Europe. Between 2007 and 2011, we have lost more than 80%. Last year, we have lost about 3%. And estimations are that this year we will continue to lose revenue in Europe. So it seems, and you have to understand that obviously there are some aspects that are linked with the crisis. But this is, and I agree 100% when my colleagues of Orange was saying that this is a structural problem. It's not a conjunctural one. Even when Europe will, the GDP in Europe will start to go again, and we hope this will happen soon, we believe that our sector will continue to face the same challenges. So we see this as a structural problem. And according to some estimation, our industry in Europe could continue to lose and shrink by up to 50 billion euro by 2020. So these are important numbers. On the contrary, as has been said, we are obliged, we have to invest. Just to give you another figure, in Europe, we invest as a whole industry about 44 billion euro per year, which represent about 15% of our total revenue. Now, what is the problem that we have apart the problem of the over-the-top which has been raised? And I would like to give you some numbers that clearly show the situation. I think that we, in Europe, we are facing with several problems. In particular, first, that in Europe there is too much regulation. Europe is the most regulated region in the world. And last week, our commissioner, as she was speaking at the parliament, she has announced her intention to abolish roaming in all over Europe. And she has announced the intention to do something on net neutrality, which will mean that the operator, according to the first rumors, will not be able anymore to block any kind of services. And I think this is important because what Europe decide could be discussed then also here in this region. So just to give you, these are only two examples. Now, a second problem that we have in Europe is fragmentation. The European market is very fragmented. We have 27 countries, and shortly we'll have 28. And this, what does it mean? That we as operators, we don't have the scale in Europe to compete with the internet players, which are global. And we have difficulties to start a cooperation among us because of antitrust rules that in Europe are very severe. And so this is something that I think you have a similar problem in the region, because you have a lot of countries, some of them are small, and I think such kind of problem will be also for your region. Just to give you numbers, in Europe we have today about 1,200 fixed operators, 100 mobile operators, 200 mobile virtual network operators, and 1,500 cable operators. See, with this mean that we have about 3,000 players. When I was giving this number to a Brazilian journalist who was interviewing me, and after a few minutes he called me back and say, sorry, there is a mistake in the number you gave me. No, sir, no, these are the right one. Because I say, but it's not possible. In Europe there are so many operators. So this is the situation of our industry today. And I think we have to find a way to, because the operators, we are not asking for rules in order to consolidate the market. We are just asking to allow the market and the operators to take the right decision and not to be hostile to this decision in order to have a possibility or operators cooperate and work together, or in certain cases they merge. Now, let me give address, if I may, only a few minutes, the problem of the relationship with the over-the-top, telco and over-the-top. I will give you this number that we gave a few days ago in Venice, and my colleague of Orange was there with other CEO of the region. If we look at the numbers of 5 major telecom operators in Europe, Telecom Italia, Orange, Deutsche Telekom, British Telecom, and Telefonica. And if we look at the number of the 5 players in what we call over the top or internet players, Google, Facebook, Yahoo, Apple, and Microsoft. What is the situation today? The revenue of the telecom, of these 5, the biggest 5 telecom operators in Europe are 260 billion. The revenue of over the top are already higher of us, 232 billion. But what happened? The cash flow of over the top is much higher than our cash flow. The cash flow of the 5 biggest telecom operators in Europe is 41 billion. Of the 5 over the top is 76 billions. Let's look at investment. The over the top invest less than half that we invest. The European, these 5 operators, invest 32 billion. And over the top invest only 14 billion. Let's look at another very important number, jobs, workers. Only these 5 companies, they have more than 700,000 employees. These 5 big over the top, they employ only 240,000 employees. So this clearly shows the differences in the situation, and this situation clearly is not sustainable as such. The good news is that on this field in Europe, we have started to work in order to align and to create a level playing field among all the chain, all the players of the chain. The European Commission is working in order to guarantee a level playing field on data protection and privacy matter issues. On security, by the way, for the first time, the new legislation in Europe on data protection will be what we call extraterritorial, means that whatever also you in the region will target an European customer, you will be obliged to follow the European rules. And this is completely new, and this is why, because when an European customer is using one service, he doesn't care if the server is outside Europe. He doesn't care, don't want to know who is providing the service, whether it's a European company or non-European company. And therefore, in order to guarantee the same level of protection, when this new law will enter into force, all the operators will be obliged to follow the European rules. There are other important matters like security, in which the European institutions are working in order to be sure that also other players follow the same rules. And taxation is becoming very hot also in Europe, as you know, because some of the over-the-top are paying a little, and so this is creating a political concern. Now, I would like, but not now, then to speak about our relationship with TV and broadcaster, because I think that this is very important on the debate on consolidation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luigi. Ammar, 3,000 operators in 27 countries, so that's an average of more than 100 operators per country. How many operators does Palestine have? And tell us about the comfortable situation you're in, I guess, relative to the rest of the operators in Palestine.
Well, maybe we are comfortable in few things, where we are very uncomfortable in other things. But we in Palestine have two legal operators, which is us, Paltel, and mainly Jawad and the mobile operator, and Paltel fixed line. And there is our competitor, Umniah, it's a joint venture between QTEL and the Palestine Investment Fund. And we have also 5 other Israeli operators that we compete with in our own territory. They cover all the Palestinian areas. The tragedy is that, when I hear all these stories, we are in much worse situation, at least when operators are losing revenues, which is the case, I guess, for all operators right now, the pressure on revenues because of the OTT services and other things, which I have my theory in it, and it has to do with politics. So I'll talk about it because I'm a Palestinian, and I cannot separate business from politics. It's a must in Palestine, and we grew as business people in Palestine to be politicians these days. Even governments, they're not formed anymore from politicians, they formed from business people. I don't know how, but most of the business people are becoming ministers these days. I don't know if it's for their luck or for bad luck. The main challenge is that we don't have a 3G. We lose all these revenues from the OTT services, like such as Viber and Skype and other things, while other operators who have mobile broadband technology, they can make up these revenues by providing data services. In our case, we have the 3G license, our competitors have the 3G license, but we don't have the spectrum, and we cannot launch any 3G service in the West Bank and Gaza. And the Israelis, the 5 operators, are offering these services. They provide huge bundles, very cheap, and they started getting back market share in our own territory because they cover all the areas, and because of the price war in the Israeli market, we were hit big time, and we started losing market share, but we're trying to fight it in other ways. My view on the OTT service, it has a political motive, trust me. I mean, you guys all seen all the reports on Al Arabiya channel and other things, on Viber and other companies, WhatsApp. Mostly they were established by retired military officers in the Israeli security forces. And that's how they started. I don't know how accurate is this. But I remember 70 years ago when I was going to college and we have to cross the borders to Palestine, the security officer would, used to stop you and interrogate you in separate room. The first question they ask you, who are your friends? Whom you talking to? Whom you live with, your roommates? All this information right now, everything is sitting on a certain server somewhere in the world. And some people have access to it. And you all know the security problems that some of the Gulf countries had with the OTT services purely for security reasons and not for business reasons. Emirates, Saudi, and all these countries, because they don't have access to this information, while somebody sitting in the US or Canada or Israel have the access to information. You yourself give the information voluntarily to these servers somewhere by subscribing to Viber, to WhatsApp, and your contact list, it's all given to some people in the world. So we'll have more challenge. I'm not talking politics now, I'm talking business, because we'll have more challenge because we will see more pressure from the OTT services and more investment are done, not because of business reasons, mainly for political and security reasons, which increase the pressure on us as operators that will be losing more and more revenues because you'll see more of it. I remember, and still, if any person wants subscribers data, if you come to Ihab or Ahmad or anyone and ask him, who's that mobile number for? By law, we're not allowed to give this information unless it comes from the security office, from police or other officers. Now, with the Truecaller application, all our numbers are on the net. Everyone knows my number, everyone knows his number. It's public information. And why? I don't think this was technology driven at the start. It was driven by security needs somewhere in the world. And we'll see more and more investments in the OTT because it was a proven way of getting information from people all around the world to certain people that are sitting in the US or any servers. Cloud computing, all these things that we heard about in the presentation, and also prepared my talking point about the road ahead, which mainly repetition of what was said in the presentation, but again, the security concern, the bank fraud. I was talking to a friend of mine who was sitting next to me during the presentation. The bank fraud, the 45 million bank fraud that happened in the Middle East, it happened to banks. They used the cloud services. They did not have their infrastructure inside their banks. They outsourced it to a company somewhere, I think in India or somewhere. So again, there are more issues on security. They need to be tackled, which will impact our revenues at the end of the day, because we will be losing more revenues from operators in the area. And it was explained, that most of these revenues are moved from even Europe and Middle East and everywhere else in the world to North America by the content providers. I'm not, again, speculating. I'm not trying to talk politics, but it's the fact of life that revenues are shifting from operators, but they're going somewhere to content players in the US. Google, Facebook, Apple, and those people are making money, and operators everywhere else in the world are losing money. But they are making more money with less investment, more access to information, and putting more pressure on everyone else, else in the world. Thank you.
Just to clarify, they're losing potential revenues, but you're still luckily all making money. Luckily, so far. Please start preparing your questions and comments for the panel. I'm going to start. Taxation was a theme, so I'm going to. The taxation in Jordan on cellular operator is 24% income tax and 10% revenue share. What is it in Telecom Italia, and what is it in Palestine? The taxation on Telecom Italia. What's the tax burden that Telecom Italia pays to the government?
Yes, perhaps I could also answer at European level. So we don't have the problem that you have here in the region, in the sense that we have a VAT. In Europe, we have, there are some differences. So the lowest VAT is 12% in Europe. The highest is in Hungary, is 27% VAT. Then we don't have a special taxation on telecom. We have had recently one case in Hungary. They tried to introduce a special taxation for the telecom sector, which was about 6.5% on revenue. And the European Commission has started an infringement procedure against Hungary because considered is not legal. And we have had two cases in France and in Spain, because the government was considering to use the taxation of telecom in order to finance the public broadcasters. And also this is against the European law. So we don't have a special taxation as such as a telecom operator, but we pay the corporate taxation in some countries is 50%. So it's a very important taxation.
So in Telecom Italia, the percent is 50%. Okay.
But not only Telecom Italia, all the Italian companies. Yes, okay. There are no differences because you are a telecom operator.
Jawad, and I think it's unfair to compare this region with with Europe. When we talk about the ARPU in Europe, it's extremely high. The average amount that the user pays to the telecom operators in Europe is high. The services provided over the mobile networks, smartphones, or even over the data network, because the infrastructure is matured, highly matured, and there are so much of convergent services being provided in Europe, so it's not a fair comparison. Now, if we talk about Jordan, it's not only 10 and 24. And I disagree when somebody says that the sales tax of 16% and the special tax of 12%, this is paid by the consumer. But if I don't invest, you will not get it. If we don't get the service everywhere, for the government to get this 12% and 16% from the consumer, we had invested $1.5 billion US. And if we did not put this 1.5 billion US dollars, then this will not be an income for the government. We pay the frequency fees, the annual fees of the frequency, straight to the government. And I believe in Jordan, the case has to be the other way around. We miss the fact that the telecom infrastructure in Jordan to a certain level or at a certain point of time reached a very matured stage. And we were ahead of so many other countries in the region. Today, because of the challenges, the financial challenges that the telecom operators are having, the regulations, the lack of cooperation between the stakeholders, we're slowing down the investment, or the investment on the telecom infrastructure in Jordan slowed down. While what we need for the future is a more investment into infrastructure. We cannot get a fourth operator to encourage investment. We cannot increase taxes to encourage investment. At the end of the day, any investor who comes in, okay, when we are comparing this region to Europe, for example, European operators, they already got their initial investments. Okay. They recovered their initial investments, and now each new investment for them is a separate business case. For operators in this region, they did not recover their initial investment yet. They did not mature enough to offer the services that are being offered in Europe. They did not mature enough in infrastructure. Although we are happy with the stage we reached in infrastructure in Jordan, but still we need more investments.
But actually it's interesting because we started as saying we shouldn't compare to Europe, but actually in Jordan the level of taxation is very close to what Telecom Italia is paying, the effective
on the total taxation, yes. Jawad, in Jordan, on the total taxation, either what the consumer pays or what the telecom operator pays, if I'm not mistaken, we're number one in the world.
We're certainly number one in the Arab world.
We're number one in the world.
Ammar, what is it in Palestine?
Well, if you look at the total taxation, it's 40 plus because there is 16% VAT, there is 20% corporate tax rate and other things. The difference between us and Jordan.
Do you pay revenue share as well?
And we pay revenue share 7% from the upper line, like total gross revenues without any deductions. That's what we pay for. So in total, it's somewhere in 40s. The problem is that even sales tax even and revenue share, everything, but sales tax is paid by us. When you pay, when you buy $10 prepaid card, it's included in it the VAT. You don't pay it on the top of the price of the card. So the burden of increasing VAT comes on the operator. And that's actually by itself, I agree with what Ahmad said and others. Taxation is a big burden on the operators. Every time the government wants to look for other sources of financing, they look to telecom operators. It's the case in Jordan, the case in Palestine. In one case, when they wanted to change the tax rate, they wanted to have our a blessing for it and to announce in the media, the Prime Minister, that we are with the tax rate increasing the tax rate from 15 to 20%, and we take tax concessions in the future. So we agreed to it as a principle. The next day, the Prime Minister announced in the press conference, Paltel has agreed to it, and we're very happy that Paltel has agreed, and we hope other companies will do that voluntarily, before they approved it in the cabinet. So it's telecom operators are suffering, and they are perceived as people who are making money, but not as we used to make before, but we still have to pay more for taxes and other concession. Like Ahmad said, the effect is there will be no more real investment in the infrastructure if at the end of the day we'll be losing money out of it. Everything, the telecom operator has to suffer because of the changes in the economy. And we are a main driver in the economy, and we should be perceived as such.
Clearly, taxation has hit a nerve. Jean-Francois has a point, and then Ihab has another point.
Yes, well, taxation is becoming one of my favorite subjects recently, and it's not for the good. But just to give to share the figures with our audience. Jordan Telecom revenue is about 400 million GD. One way or the other, we are channeling 125 million GD to the government with all the taxes, frequencies, licenses. So every time, in fact, one of our customers is buying a 4GD scratch card, there is 1.25 GDs that goes to the government. So I'm telling my friend I have two jobs. I'm a telecom operator and I'm a tax collector. And I have two questions. First, I think it's not a nice way to collect the money because every tax system should be progressive. And here, everybody is buying a 4GD card, and the poor people pay the same amount of tax than the rich people. So it's not a redistribution through this system. The second point is that at the end of the day, this decreases my power for investment. And long term, we know it's wrong. And my third point is, and it's an open question, how much Google is paying tax to this government?
Yeah.
Let me just shed some light on one thing. Irrespective taxes in Europe or in Jordan or in any country, if you pay 24 or 40 or 50 or you pay revenue sharing 10 or 20, from investment point of view, when you get the license and you start operating in a country, you build your business and your investment on certain percentages when it comes to revenue sharing and when it comes to income tax. And all of us, when we have invested in 2000 or in 94 or 2005, we built it accordingly. What worries me personally, that there is no stability and there is no visibility. You cannot sleep at night and wake up in the morning, somebody telling you, listen, we are thinking of doing the revenue sharing 10 or maybe 12 or 20. And the income tax, we are thinking between 24 to somewhere between 40 to 45. As an investor, the first thing you will do is you will run away till you have clarity. And this is what happened. Looking at Jordan in specific, the three operators, they are regional/international players. They have market A, market B, market C, and they look at the return from each market. The minute they see that this market has a potential less return than the plan that they got the license at the early, when they launched, they will start panicking. And for me, the board will tell me, okay, Ihab, hold. And this is what happened with us on the 3G when we paid the 50 million. Said, hold till we see the government, what decisions they will make when it comes to income tax, revenue sharing, and how much they're gonna charge for a new license if it's LTE or what have you, electricity increase. So the name of the game is, again, balance and stability, clarity, visibility. As any investor, even on a personal level, when you put a 1 JD one place, if it's not stable, you will not do it, even if you have 100% return. So this is really, I urge all the decision makers, not only in, and back to the balance thing, to the government in specific, please don't make the investor panic. If they panic, they will run away. Thank you.
Ahmad, you had a point?
What I wanted to add, Jawad, is one thing. You know, there has to be a connection between investment, and what we need to understand is what the telecom operators are investing in Jordan. We don't even get a thank you for that. We're investing 50 million a year, and nobody says thank you, you're investing, you're building an infrastructure for this country and for this nation. On the other side,
On behalf of Jordan, thank you.
on the other side, Francois said they're channeling 125 million. We're channeling more than 150 million every year to the government. Our revenues are less than Orange revenues, and we pay 150 million. What is our profits? It's almost, I cannot declare my profits. I know some, they know it, but we are, let's say, 50% of that. So what we make is 50% of what the tax collector makes. What's the return on investment for the government? 150 million%, because there is no investment, zero. So that's the return on investment on the government. What's the return on investment for the telecom operators? Once we ask someone, if you invest in a building and you pay $1 million to build a commercial building, what do you expect to make at the end of each year? They said 100,000 minimum. What if we don't make that 100,000 minimum? What's the return on investment on our accumulated investments from the inception of the, and we still need to invest even more. As we move forward, if we are talking about moving positively, keeping Jordan on the leading position in the telecom industry in the region, means the investments required on the next 10 years is in billions of dollars, not in millions of dollars. Thank you.
We'll start taking questions as Ammar makes a very short point. Please prepare your questions and start raising your hands. The government wants to answer, so you will get the first reply.
I don't know if I should speak on the Jordanian market or not, but at least as Paltel, we had certain share in one of the previous operators in Jordan, which is Express. And in Express license, it was supposed to be transferred to a mobile license at some point of time. And we could have done that. As an outsider, an investor, and you know the synergy between Jordan and Palestine, and Paltel would be a viable operator to operate in Jordan because of the synergy between Palestine and Jordan. We looked at all numbers, and what Ahmad talked about in return on investment, it did not work. And everybody pressured our chairman, who's a well-known businessman in Jordan, to get into the telecom market in Jordan, and we decided not to because we ran the figures and they never worked from a return on investment point of view.
Muhammad, تفضل.
I'm Muhammad Ta'ani, the chairman of the TRC. My question is to Mr. Luigi. Do you happen to have any idea about the ratio of the net profit to revenues for the European operators?
الكشاف لو سمحت في الكشاف.
I don't want to give a number when I'm not sure. So, but if you could also explain what is the reason of this question. So means what is your I don't have this precise number, but what is your question? If you can express in another way in which I can try to answer. So you are saying that the level of profits are too high? That was your question?
Not really, because what I am thinking of, to compare what we have in Jordan with what you have in Europe, for instance, Mr. Hanandeh said we do not have the same baselines of ARPU, and you need to look at some global figure or global formula really to be able to compare apples to apples. So probably if we think of net profit over revenues, this could normalize the comparison.
And I believe what is need to be analyzed is, as we said, the return on investment. The European market is completely different than the Arab market. The formulas, the statistics, their operating expenses versus revenue is different than our operating expenses versus revenue. Their cost is different. Their competitive environment is different. If you want to compare us to Europe, you have to compare us to Europe 15 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 7 years ago. But to answer your question, Jordan versus the international average ratios, financial ratios, we are behind in the net profit ratios. In so many other countries across the world and in the region, the ratio is much better than Jordan. The return on investment, as we say, the return on investment in Jordan, today, we can say it's under a big challenge, yet acceptable. We did not say that today we're having a problem with the return on investment. What I'm saying is, does the return on investment allows a fourth operator? Does the return on investment allows an increased taxes? Does the return on investment allows an extra burden on the shoulders of the telecom operators? And this is the big question that we need to answer. Competitiveness in Jordan is considered the second highest competitive market in the region. Penetration, it's highly penetrated. Prices, we are the lowest, the second lowest in the Arab world in prices. Quality, we can challenge the whole region and even the worldwide services. The quality of services provided in Jordan is very competitive to the international standards, and this is due to a heavy investment made in Jordan in the telecom sector, because it was one of the most promising sectors at the point of time. Today, what we are asking for is to continue on that vision. We need to have a future vision, not a short-term plan. If we are planning or taking our decisions on short-term plans, maximizing the cash benefit of the government at the account of the future infrastructure or the future of this industry, then yes, we are doing a mistake, in my opinion.
Thank you. We have a question from Bassem. Ihab, while Bassem gets the mic, please.
Yes, but comment. I was worried, honestly, that Luigi will say that they have the ratio is less profits than our part of the world. And this is that I was worried that the answer will be like this, then we will be expecting more income tax on that one. So I was worried from the question, so just to know.
Bassem?
Okay, thank you, Jawad. And thank you, Abu Karim, for the undeserved acknowledgement. I have two questions to put forward. The first was, last year during the summit, the CEOs expressed the same concerns about shrinking margins, the price-based competition, etc. And I, as a consumer, we don't see much difference that has taken place in that front. The second question is, or at least I would like to hear if anyone wants to comment on the first wave of enforcement of censorship, which ironically coincides with His Majesty's launching of the Democratic Empowerment Program, which really impacts at least the side of content, etc., at least for Jordan. And thank you, that's my questions.
Luigi, your initial point first.
If I may, I just a few comments on this important issue of investment. Because what happened that I usually meet a lot of investors, and they are always asking the same question. And I think that what is important, that for the investors, it's not important the result that we have had, but what they're looking for is our future. They want to understand whether the results that we have had are sustainable, and we will continue to have such kind of result. The problem is that they don't believe anymore in our sector. So in one word, they feel that our sector has become much more risky. In Europe, the fund pension, they cannot invest in telecom because they feel it's too risky. So, and you always, I think, as a regulator, who has is a decision maker in the institution, in politics, you have to understand that investors, they can first decide whether to invest. They can choose to invest in energy, in other sector. So first, they have to choose to invest in telecom. Second, they have to choose where to invest. In the region, which gave much more return, is growing faster. And so you have to compete. You have also this level of competition. Convince them to invest in the telecom sector rather than in other sectors that are much more growing and are giving much higher return, and convince them to invest in this region, not in another. So I think this is very challenging. I think you should always look at this as a main point when you take decision and keep, and don't consider that the investment will be forever. This is a major mistake of people. They feel, yes, but they will invest in any case. No, it's not true. If there are no conditions, we will invest less.
Ihab? Just to answer the question on the challenges that the revenue is dropping and the consumer didn't feel it, I'm really surprised, but I just want to give you, from the operator's point of view, how much the drop from the traditional services, like the voice, like the SMS, how much that revenue dropped. And what does this mean? If you look all now, not 90%, everyone in the room at least uses one, if not more than those applications like the WhatsApp and like the Viber and what have you. This revenue, these applications have substituted the SMS revenues for the operators. Jordan, in numbers, last year we had 1.6 billion SMS in 2011. In 2012, it's 1.2. That drop around 20% of SMS revenue. From a consumer point of view, you are using other applications that you are not paying for that specific service. So definitely, if you look at the ARPU is going down, the revenue is clearly plateauing, and we are, as operators, we are bridging that drop in revenues only from a new access revenues, like you are buying gigas, you are buying data, so you are paying a different service within that, on the top of the traditional one.
You have remember to look at the censorship thing as well.
I passed the censorship thing. I didn't get the question.
Basically, he asked about the recent government directive for the ISPs and telcos to block, I think, 300 news sites.
297. Yes. Okay. I think I would say maybe the regulator should answer this question. I would love if you don't mind, because for us as an operators, we, as per the law, Article 3.12, if I'm not mistaken, on the telecom law, that we should abide by the law of any direction or instructions from the regulator to block them. And what happened on the other part, why they were requesting, and I think I will leave it to the regulator to answer, if you allow me, Your Excellency.
Ahmad.
We go by the laws and the legislations. And for instance, what happened yesterday, we have issued a request to all operators to block some news sites which are licensed, which are not licensed according to the law. So from our own perspective, we do apply what the legislations ask us to do. We do not create it.
Thank you, Ammar.
As someone who's not Jordanian, maybe I can say something about our experience in Palestine, about the website and the news websites. In Gaza alone, we have more than 70 websites on news, all news. And also in the West Bank, we have so many of them. We all agree that we need a legal framework to organize the content of these websites. Anybody can set any kind of news on the website, and you don't know if it's true or not. And when you go legal against that website, there is no legal framework to go after them and actually put them on accountability. Everybody can set any kind of news. We had some tragedies put on the news, like one night, one website decided to set one piece of news on one of my senior officers, that he had an accident and died because of an employee issue. The website owner is a friend with that employee, and they said this kind of the news. Without legal framework to govern the work of those websites, we have a problem in each country, not only in Jordan. So I think we as operators will have to go by the law, but laws has to be enacted. They have to be enacted to organize the content of these news sites. Otherwise, the country will be in a mess. I don't know the details of the law, but at least I know that there has to be a legal framework.
Thank you. Luigi, I wanted to ask you about the moves you do with the broadcasters in Europe, and also if you have any comments on censorship or regulations.
Thank you very much. I would like to say a few words on this because at the end this is a summit on the convergence, and I think that we should not give only bad news. There are also positive news, right? Because I think that our sector has the capacity to come out and to challenge the situation. One important aspect that I see that in our future business, in particular the operators that are integrated, the fixed and mobile, is the relationship and the potentiality with the broadcasters. I think that I was discussing yesterday when one of my friends that is in Jordan, and one important aspect that I want to share with you, and is the experience that we are having in Europe, is that obviously it's very important whether what is the situation of the broadcasters. So, for example, in Europe we have two categories of countries. We have countries they have cable operators, and a country that they don't. For example, Italy, we don't have cable operators because we have only free air TV, and we have digital terrestrial TV and satellite. So I think one thing that is very clear is what help the investment and make the case for fiber is TV, availability of TV, distribution of TV channels. We have in Europe experience of several operators. I have with me now one of Belgacom, which has a TV everywhere, and this is extremely successful. And so we see that our future, in a certain way, is linked with the broadcaster, but not in the sense that we will acquire broadcasters. I fully agree with what my colleague was saying before, but the possibility that we have to create a partnership with them and to distribute the broadcasters on our network. Obviously, who is the enemy of the broadband, the super broadband, super fast broadband? Is the free air TV. Because in a country, and I think this is a problem that you have in this region as well, if TV is free, and you have, in that way, will be extremely difficult for the operator to justify the investment of fiber. Because, and so I think that it will be very important to start to think what to do in order to encourage the broadcasters to go on the broadband networks and to abandon progressively the free air TV and the terrestrial digital TV. Because if you have such kind of offer for free in this way, it will be extremely difficult to justify, make the case for the investment on fiber.
Thank you. We are running pressed for time, but we have some short time for a brief question from Majd.
Thank you, Jawad, and thank you to the panelists. Although I left the telecom sector, but I'm very passionate about telecom. My question, with the disruptive ambiguity in terms of environment and the challenges we are facing currently, all types of challenges, economic, political, regulator, and everything. We believe that investments in technology and in networks is a straightforward thing, and although it's very tough at sometimes, taking the decision whether to invest or not to invest, taking into consideration the long-term return on investment. My question, which Mr. Hanandeh touched upon, is investing in innovation. My question, are we doing the right things to enable an innovative culture? And if yes, how? Thank you.
Is the question directed to somebody?
No, just for the operators. What are we doing really to motivate and encourage and enable an innovative culture? Because business is not as usual, and we definitely need innovation because we need to move in a different direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Majd. This is a very good question, actually. We didn't have the time to touch on the innovation part. Definitely, this is the future. Actually, any operator, they decide or not to follow that path, then they might be out of the business in the coming 5 to 10 years, if not shorter. Definitely, innovation is the name of the game. I'm sure each operator has his own way of doing that, but we need to create some success stories of how we do that innovation. And the path to do that is really we need to give more room and to cater in our operations for the startups that they create the innovation. We will not do the innovators. We will not be the innovators as an operators. But we have hundreds of potential startups that they innovate. All what we need to do is to give them the platform and to be part of what they are doing to cover the revenue stream that we are facing as a drop. And at Umniah and in specific, what we have done, we have a lot of success stories. One of it that we have signed with the Plug and Play in Silicon Valley, and we will give the chance to all the startups in the country who can apply for that, and they can be accepted as part of the criteria, to send them to Silicon Valley as an accelerator to stay for 100 days there. On the account of, we'll send around 20 to 25 every year. They will stay for 3 months there in a very, I would say, aggressive mentorship program in an accelerator in Silicon Valley. Then we will give them the chance to pitch in their innovation in the front of the biggest investors in Silicon Valley. Then they will come here, and then they use our operations as the launch pad for that. So definitely each operator has stories for that.
If I may, I think this is a very important question, because I think that also the decision makers should think more about innovation rather than only competition. And I think that we can have a regulation which favor innovation. For example, I travel quite often to Asia, and when I speak with some of my colleagues, and they live in a very, very beautiful countries, they say, some of them, there is a little regulation. And I tell them, well, you are very lucky because you have a little regulation, you don't have a problem that we have in Europe. And say, no, on the contrary, Luigi, here is very tough. I say, why? Because we have to innovate. Our competitor, we have much freedom. We have not to ask regulation, we are not regulated. And this, what does it mean in concrete? That the competition is driven by innovation. And when you have to compete with your competitor, you have to do something that he is not doing. And so you have to innovate. And in order to answer to his innovation, you have to innovate. That's the right way to do the things. The problem is when you have too much regulation, you are not allowing the operators to innovate, and you block them. So I think that we should have a much more freedom as operator, and this will create much more value for us and for the consumer.
Thank you, Luigi. Ahmad, you had some comments? Briefly, please, because we're running out of time.
To go briefly, yes, we do have programs and plans to encourage innovation. The development of the telecommunication and ICT sector opens the door anyway for innovation. Most of the startups, the success stories that we see every day in Jordan depends heavily on the information technology and telecommunication infrastructure. Internally, we do support innovation within the organization, and at the same time, we support organizations similar to Oasis, we're the second biggest investor in Jazz, and so many others, in creating either the incubator or the proper environment, or adopting great ideas. And our doors are always open for ideas, innovative ideas, to support, incubate, adopt, till we see it as a success story. Thank you.
Ammar, you had some comment?
It's the same with Paltel. We are the main sponsors for all incubators in Palestine. They come up with all startups and mobile applications. We have managed also to develop one of these mobile application developers to business model where they partnered with our mobile operator to start making money and make their own company. We're trying to partner with Oasis 500 to move the model to Palestine because they have a good experience in Jordan, and maybe we can move it to Palestine. Most of the activities for innovation and incubators for innovations are sponsored and actually promoted by us.
Thank you very much. So we're running out of time. I'd like to thank Jean-Francois, Luigi, Ihab, Ahmad, and Ammar for their time. Thank you for your attendance.